Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of QTube. Today, we are joined all the way from London, England, with comedian slash musician, Mr. Joe Parsons. Hello, Joe. How are you doing?
Hi, guys. I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. It's a little wet here today. We've had a very sunny summer. On the east coast of Canada, which is good, but it's a little dreary today. So how's England? It's nighttime for you.
Windy. I mean, I had such massive hair walking back from work earlier. It's like properly, like we've got a storm coming in. I'm not sure what the name of the storm is. It's like Meg or something. Coming over, blowing us over. It's quite exciting. I quite like the sort of extreme weather. It's terrible, isn't it? As long as everyone's safe, I really like a bit of weather.
Blustery's not bad. Blustery can be kind of fun and exciting.
Yeah, it's not cold. So that's, if it's blustery, cold and wet, then that's a horrible combo. Anyway, not very interesting. Very British of me to start with a very in-depth weather-based chat. Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's how old friends catch up. How's the weather?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, first of all, thanks for joining me today and talking to us. You have brand new single. Is it your debut single?
It is my debut. Yeah, I mean, I've written about 5 albums, never released any. You know, when you just got like I've got like a secret bundle of some pretty awful music, and then so this is the first thing I've properly released.
Because you never know, like when you go through catalogs and you see in Spotify it's the only one that's there, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the only one that's been released. It could have been on SoundCloud or Bandcamp or something like that. But this is your debut single. It is called Pilot. It is the lead single off your forthcoming self-titled album, which is coming out on October 13th, which I believe is your birthday, and I believe it's your 30th birthday.
Yeah, what amazing. That's great knowledge, man. Like, really good memory. That's sort of stuff I'd trip over on everything. Even though it's my single, I didn't know any of that stuff. That was very impressive. But yeah, self-titled, out on the 13th of October, if I sort distribution out properly.
So Pilot is the lead single, and I know that it's an important one for you because it does deal with the topic of coming out and dealing with those emotions, those issues, and you know, those kinds of songs are really important to anybody who's out there who's struggling. But first, let's step back for just a second, because you are a comedian and you have been practicing comedy for a while, correct?
Yeah, of sorts. Yeah, that was the career drive. That was what I was working towards, and then coronavirus, as we know, coronavirus has happened, and then that stopped comedy completely. So I had new focus with music. But yeah, I've been doing comedy about 5 years, and it's great.
So was music always part of the plan?
No, never part of the plan. It was always part of the plan before, like 6 years ago, when I discovered comedy. And then I was like, oh, comedy, I don't have to take a piano around and I don't have to learn how to sing properly. That is so much easier to get around the UK without, you can do it on trains. So that's why I sort of got into comedy, through ease of performing. And it's a way of just being able to say some stuff that you really care about. But I've always loved music. Music was like my absolute friend for all of my childhood and university life. So that was always the dream, like playing Glastonbury or sort of doing, or being absolutely destroyed in Pitchfork. Do you know what I mean? Like the kind of classic things that musicians want. I want a 3 out of 10. Come on, Pitchfork. Tell me down. So that's what I sort of wanted. And then, yeah, started doing comedy, and it's such a time-hungry thing to do because all of your evenings are gone. It sort of just drowns everything. So the fact that it was taken away for a bit and meant that I could do music again was a real blessing in disguise.
In your background, I know that you have, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably am wrong, but you do have a bit of a background in terms of playing, like you play piano. And do you have a jazz background, or is it just an interest?
No, I used to play jazz quite a bit. I played a few live jazz bits, but often with my dad playing drums and my mate Parfit on the double bass. Lovely little trio. We supported the Magic Numbers. That's my biggest claim to fame as a jazz musician. But I'm not, like, if anyone watched me play the piano, they'd just hate watching it, because if they knew anything about piano, I don't play with the right fingers. I've never learned how to read music, but I've been playing since I was 5. So some will probably watch me play piano and go, he hasn't learned much since probably the age of 10.
So now you're kind of both feet are, is it safe to say both feet into music?
At the moment, definitely. And I think I'm hoping I can just sort of do it in sort of seasons. So like I can do for a year, do music and then focus on comedy for a bit. But it's sort of just whatever is around and whatever takes my fancy, really. I just like being creative, and actually I've really sort of rediscovered music again and how much I love it. And it's been just a really fun, quite cathartic exercise to just focus on something that's much more truly honest than like comedy, where you have to give a slight veneer of comedy through the honesty and to get people to laugh sometimes. With music, you can be really honest. I love that.
So Pilot is lead single, as we've said. And I gotta say, it's a strong debut. I mean, there's a lot that's happening in the song, but I'm gonna kind of toss it to you to kind of give us the rundown of what it's about and kind of where it came from.
Thanks. That's very kind of you to say, by the way. It is, I wrote a song called Series, which uses the same piano motif for the album. And then I wrote Pilot afterwards, which is a bit upside down. But I thought a pilot comes before a series, and it felt like a very neat start to my music career, if you want to call it that. I thought we're better place to start than talking about coming out. It sets the tone of the album, which is sort of a big sort of examination of what homosexuality is like, and that stems from repression, from before coming out, and then coming out, and then afterwards, because there's still a process afterwards. It's I've often, there is a sort of misconception is you do the big announcement and then you're fine. That just wasn't my experience. You sort of make errors, you make mistakes, you work out whether you like yourself yet. And Pilot was a really good one because it just retells the story of me telling that first person that I was gay, where one of my friends, she basically noticed that I wasn't being myself, and I was doing a lot of walks because I was running away from my brain. I thought if I walked enough, they wouldn't catch up the gay thoughts. And there was a point where it was just really getting me down at university, and she just went, Joe, you're going on so many walks. It's too many walks are happening. Why are you walking everywhere? And I just told her, and it was like she'd sort of whipped the carpet from under my feet a little bit. So she was really, it was like magic. I don't quite know how she did it. And so I referenced that in the lyrics. It's like a magic trick. She just managed to just completely floor me and make me be honest when I've spent the last 5 or 6 years really hating myself for not being honest. So I suppose Pilot is a kind of, from a musical perspective, it's quite trippy. And I sort of wanted it to feel that kind of jubilation of coming out and that relief, but also it doesn't really feel real. I'm sure some people who have come out might feel like it's a bit of a punch. You're like, oh my God, what's happened? And it's slightly like, it's a bit underwhelming as well. I sort of want more from it, but yeah, it wasn't quite like, it still meant that you felt very weird and sort of nervous for the next 5 or 6 months around your friends because you were worried they're going to treat you differently. So the music video references that. It's all quite sort of colourful, and then it strips back straight back to the sort of start of the song, which is very bare. So
I do like how you have in the video you use, there's you, and there's like kind of you superimposed over top of yourself, almost kind of like an interesting out of body experience on video. And then, you know, it's in one sense, it's kind of exposing. There's definitely a vulnerability that's happening in the video. When you listen to the song first and you hear it, I mean, I pick up on a few. I love alternative music, and I love anybody who kind of blurs different genres together, and they're not afraid to kind of like use instrumentation that maybe we don't often use because the world wants us to have the same iambic pentameter of music kind of happening. So when you listen to the song, you kind of get one thing, and then you watch the video, and it really does give you that sense, and it really invites you in to kind of see that vulnerability. But then when you have those bars of color that are coming, which in one sense it looks like, you know, from the TV, those, you know, station identification kind of things.
The theme, yeah.
But also when you listen to the music and you look at the colors, you do see that rainbow essence that is coming through. It really tells a full-on story in a very, I guess, no, I don't want to say simple. It's not simple, but it is, you know, you can have bells and whistles, you can have skyrockets, you can have fireworks, but you just kind of took the essence of the emotion of it and kind of put it on film.
Yeah, I thank you very much as well. I mean, it was a really tough record. One, because I was topless and I'm not super confident in my body anyway, and that's sort of a bone of therapy that I'm trying to work on at the moment. So I thought, what's the most vulnerable thing I can possibly do? That's be topless. It was filmed in my bedroom in my flat here during 32-degree heat. My friend, because it was all done during lockdown, so my friend had to come over when it was okay for someone to come over. We had a really rubbish black curtain just sort of put up, and it was so bodgy. Like, my neighbours thought a porno was definitely happening because I was just popping in and out topless. Like, there's a film camera going in and out as well. And then, like, a friend then who directed it, edited it all in Weston-super-Mare, where I'm from. So it's all very much local people that were really helpful in all of it. And I did all the animation and the sort of glitchy sort of TV effects, which, yeah, again, it was the idea of that putting something on a screen, that veneer of putting something on television, but then it just disjointed, just being disjointed. And obviously that references the rainbow flag really well. So it was, that's the concept. I'm really happy you picked up on that, basically, because a bit of thought went into it.
I thought it was, like I said, in a simplistic format, because it doesn't overcompensate, and it doesn't overwhelm you with all these different kinds of images. You're not trying to be hit. It is your silhouette, and it is your image. Like I said, kind of superimposed over top of one another, and then those colors that are coming through, and they work really, really well with the music, because it does have that, and I mean, a band of horses, that style of music that kind of comes through, that a little bit of esoteric sounds, a little bit of, you know, there's that alternative sound that kind of comes in there, but it really is an engaging song. And it's fantastic for this kind of, it's almost like a reveal in a way, as a debut single for you as an artist in entering music. And it's interesting that you say about the topless thing, because it's such a common theme with men, gay men. We all either go one way or the other. We either don't want to take our clothes off, or we can't keep them on. You know, if you Instagram, we can't keep them on. And it's interesting, like those body image issues that you're talking about, and how it's so prevalent, and it's part and parcel with the sexuality and that kind of thing. But it's great that you had that moment that you probably dreaded. But was it as nerve-wracking as it was it, you know, even more kind of, you know, helpful, I guess?
Oh, it's definitely helpful. Like, I've worked really hard over the year, just sort of trying to work on my fitness and being healthier, because I was smoking, I was drinking, I was having a lovely time, basically. So I thought,
you're a comedian.
Exactly. When you're a comedian in bars all the time, you're just smoking and drinking all the time. So I was like, right, at lockdown again, it was a lockdown moment, a classic. Right, let's be better. Just be a bit healthier. Stop enjoying yourself and be better. So I'd worked really hard pre-music video to sort of get myself down to a sort of shape that I've never been before. So is that helpful? I don't know. But it doesn't feel like, what would have been the most helpful is just to have not worried and just gone straight into it, regardless of what I look like, instead of like putting myself on what I would think would be like an actor regime of fitness before the music video shoot. So was it helpful? I don't know. I'm really proud of the video, and I'm proud of doing it. And I think it, as you said, within the gay community, the one thing you're doing most of when you're young is hiding. And I think that feeling of hiding was very much something. I'd never be topless on beaches or anything. I'd wear a jumper into water if I could. Like, I just wouldn't want, I really hated being topless. And I don't know why that was, whether it was more than body image. So yeah, I think it doesn't matter. All shapes and sizes, people have that, sometimes just have a really unusual wall in their head that just goes, no, you're not, that's something you don't like doing. So yeah, it was a way of testing it a little bit, I think. And yeah, as I said, I wanted my music to be super, super open. So
now you're going to have this whole stream of gentlemen knocking on your door because of the video, and they're just going to, you're not going to know what to do with yourself. You're just going to be like overwhelmed.
That moment.
So this is like the first single off the upcoming album. It's going to be, it's a full album, isn't it?
Yeah, full 10-track album. It was going to be 9 tracks, but I wrote one and I couldn't drop it. So I was like, I didn't want to do 10 songs for a cost, really, because I'm getting it all mastered and stuff. So from a cost perspective, getting another song mastered was like, well, we could try and keep it to 9 tracks. But I'm really proud of it. It's really intimate, it's really personal, sometimes quite funny, I think. Well, I find it funny. I don't know.
I guess, and I mean, you're kind of answering a little bit of it. I was going to ask you if there's a general theme that kind of goes through it, or is it a start to finish kind of story in one encapsulation? Is that what you're kind of going for with the album concept?
Yeah, I sort of see it as a bit of a time travel. So the way it started was I was writing a script that was completely not related to me, and I wanted to do this music for the script, and I was going to film it and then do the music. So it was just purely to score a script I was writing. And then I realized that the character I was talking about was me. There's a horrible realization where I'd written myself into a character, and I thought, well, actually that's quite interesting if I went and interviewed myself back in time. So if I went back to 2014 and interviewed myself then and asked him the question, how do you feel? What would he say? And that's sort of how I've structured the songs. Yeah, I sort of, I wanted it to be this kind of interview where I'm the interviewer. I asked this 15-year-old me how I felt, 20-year-old me how I felt. And then at those times, it would have been really interesting because there would be times where I'd be super flippant, super opinionated, particularly when I was like 19. I had a really strong opinion of what I thought homosexuality was. So I was just trying to write with that mindset. And it was really interesting. It's quite funny how easily you can go back to those moments and go, I remember when I was stood there, and what I would have said if I was asked about. If like 15-year-old me would have seen me now, he would have gone, what? That's a bit of a U-turn from wife and kids. Come on, I thought you were going to live a lie.
But we're kind of like told that from a very early age that this is kind of what you aim for. What the life is supposed to be, and we kind of go, okay, and don't, and away we go with that until we hit these bumps in the road where we're kind of like, but I don't know if that's necessarily who I am and what I want.
It's a classic case of when you're in school, they teach you about sex education, when a man and a woman love each other very much. Everything on TV is straight relationships. And it's so good that we're seeing a lot more diversity now on TV. And it's amazing what some people are doing to just normalize absolutely everything within, particularly same-sex relationships. I think there's still some way to go with the trans community for sure. But there have been huge sort of steps forward in that. Whether J.K. Rowling likes it or not. So it's good that the younger people now, like I saw a great post the other day that made my mind blow. There's this young kid like going to prom with a guy, and I was like, fuck me, in my small town, that would have been like the most mad thing you could have ever done. And now he's just going off and and his mum was posting it on Twitter because she was so proud. And I'm very lucky, my parents are very supportive and always have been, but I know a lot of people aren't that lucky. So it's great that society is moving very slowly. There's still a lot to do, and I think it's very easy to get complacent.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I mean, especially when it comes to things like music and entertainment, where we haven't seen a ton of, you know, for the thousands and thousands and millions of members of the LGBT community that are out there. We have Sam Smith and Halsey, and you know, Frank Ocean and the odd person that kind of comes in. So you already know from the get-go that's kind of like, okay, this is completely lopsided. I mean, it's one of the reasons that, you know, we do things like this and trying to make sure that you have a voice, is because you're out there. And, you know, 15-year-old you would have loved to have had 30-year-old, maybe not you, but 30-year-old version type of you to have a crush on when you're a teen, because you can see themselves in you, where you didn't have that. You didn't grow up with that, where it was like there were these stars that you could fantasize about, or you know, just daydream about, that you could see yourself in.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. I think it's very, very fair. I always thought it was quite interesting, particularly when Sam Smith sort of talked about their new pronouns, and then Kay Tempest has just recently done this, formerly Kate, but now is Kay. And it's been a much more positive response, even in the space of a year.
You know, I think that you're right, that there has been a change. And it's interesting because one of the things I don't think anybody ever really looked at was that nobody was ever educated on what it was about. So they're kind of getting their education on the fly through a lot of these artists that are coming out and explaining about it. But it's still that whole piece that's missing, you know, for, you know, the education of it, I guess.
Absolutely. And it's the same, like, whenever I talk to anyone who doesn't necessarily understand homosexuality and says something that's a little bit slightly uneducated in that sense, not to patronize anyone, but there is a point where I think, well, that's then on me to sort of explain it a little bit and inform them instead of getting angry, because no one responds well to anger. No one likes being told they're wrong. That's just a fact. No one likes being told off, particularly when you're an adult. Past the age of about 18, being told off is humiliating. So if they make a mistake, they don't want to be told off. They want to be told why, really. And I think I try and do that for myself, and I will make a huge amount of errors myself learning all of this stuff as well. And I think that's the beauty of music, and people like Kay Tempest and Sam Smith being able to educate people in that way about something that is relatively a new concept for the wider society, when they've only just got over sexuality.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, it's interesting how fast things are changing. They're not. It's so weird because we say that they're changing. It's always been there, but how fast things are coming to the forefront, that people are learning about them, and they're trying to keep up with things, and things are moving very, very quickly. And you know, on one side, you've got folks like us who are kind of like, yes, people need to know, and on the other side, you have a lot of folks who are kind of like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around, and it's kind of like, okay, we understand. Everybody has a learning curve.
And it's about cutting some people some slack a little bit. Obviously, shouting, if they're doing hate speech, then by all means, slam them down. But if they're trying, and they have, like, my parents are great with all of this, and they're always trying to learn. They're always like buying books to learn about social issues. I'm really proud of them for that, but we're all going to get it wrong. And the fact is, I was talking to someone of the generation below, you know, I can't remember what that generation's called. I think it's like, I don't know, generation new Pokemon. And they are like, oh yeah, your generation, they just moan about not being able to have a house, and they just love Harry Potter. I'm like, is that what they think of us? And I'm like, and we're just like, oh, the older generation, they ruined our housing. So every generation has this sort of idea of what the younger generation are like. So I think there's also that sort of innate challenge that we have because of, and I hope that it all just continues to improve, which it should, but who knows? The world is mad at the moment. The world is crazy right now. Like, it's if aliens come, none of us will be surprised. Oh yeah. Well, 2020. It's the 2020 alien invasion, of course. Who knew those crop circles really were aliens?
So what's come? Like, I mean, debut. My God.
It's okay, man. It's 9 o'clock.
What comes next? I mean, you have the single out, you have the video out, and the album is on its way. And again, that's a huge accomplishment, even just in itself. But now, what comes next for you? What do you look at and say, will you release more singles? Is it just the one single? Are you planning like a release? And do you think that this, like for music in the time being, and it's so weird to ask in this time because, you know, whether you're a comedian or going down the comedy road or the music road, stages are not what they used to be. So it's hard to ask that, but I'm curious from just a creative standpoint, what more do you want to do with this album, even though it's not even out yet?
Well, we've got a single coming out on the 17th of September called Repair. That sort of talks more about self-love. And that as a concept is quite an interesting one to talk about, and sort of feeling like you can always repair yourself and always improve yourself, and that idea of perfectionism that I have as well, which is not a healthy mind gremlin to keep on your shoulder. So that I'm really excited about that one. I would say it's poppy. But it's like my sort of genre inspirations are kind of like shoegaze, dream pop, trip hop as well, because I'm from Bristol area, so I'm from the Massive Attack Portishead area, so that has always been a massive inspiration as well, and the flavour of jazz. So all of that comes together, I think, really well in this, but I think it just creates an out and out ambient pop song. It's just I'm really proud of it, and then we've got another single coming out which will be aligned to the album release, so it'll be album release with single. And then what I really want to do, because there's no live band for this because it's just been done in my bedroom, because I'm super professional. So there's going to be, I want to do just a live video. So a really nicely shot live set of me doing some of the sort of the album tracks, I suppose, so not necessarily all the singles, and in a live format with a guitarist, a drummer, and a female vocalist to help me with the high notes. Because not that I'm not confident I can hit them live, but you know, it's always nice to have a bit of backup. So I want to test the water with that. If that works really nicely, then I've got a nice live setup that we can take and do some gigs if the world allows. So I would like to take it live, but I've also got an Edinburgh show that needs to happen next year for comedy. So that's already booked up, PR sorted for it. So I've got to do that as well. But it might just be juggle both for a bit.
You might end up becoming like your own opening act, you know, or either way. It's kind of like, so when you're playing live and you're the headliner in music, the comedy opens.
It's a sort of, I think with music and it's slightly going into a different route now where singles just continuously are released by artists, and I understand why that is. I think for me, I'll be a little bit more old school, and there will be a bit of a gap between albums. One, because I want a bit of a life experience that goes with that. I mean, what I really would love to do is write an orchestral piece of music that is completely full orchestra and score it. I'm really inspired by people like Radiohead and Sufjan Stevens and Sigur Rós and people like that who always reinvent themselves each album. And I don't want to be, obviously there'll be a distinctive sound because it'll be my voice and my music, but I'd love to be something different each time that's tangibly quite different.
I think as an artist, that's probably, you know, the ultimate thing that you want to do is always grow and always change and rediscover yourself through new styles, new music, new influences. As people, I think we're like that too, but I think it really comes across when you as an artist. And I think when you say Radiohead, completely. I mean, when you think of everything from the Bends or Pablo Honey right straight through, and then you hit Kid A to up to now, they've traveled such a rich texture and territory of music that they're never boring. That's for sure. May not be the 100% thing, you know, after Karma Police and you get Kid A, there may have been a little bit of a head scratching moment for some folks, but that's who they are as a band. And if they nailed it for you at that point, you know, you stay along that journey. And I think that I think that's a really great, as an artist, I think it's a really great future to kind of map out for yourself.
I just think it's really, I mean, when King of Limbs and In Rainbows were released, I just remember my mind just being absolutely blown. And Tom York's voice just sounded better than I've ever heard it in Rainbows. I was like, this is like, it's so perfect. Like Nude is just one of the most perfectly sung songs. I was like, that's a voice. And then you look at sort of things like Sufjan Stevens' Illinois album, which was just a masterpiece from start to finish, but then goes on and does Age of Odds, which is just the most challenging, sometimes incredibly challenging album. And then something as incredibly sad and moving as Carrie and Lowell, and you're like, that's real artistry there, and I can only ever try to shoot that high. But like that, those are the inspirations, and if I can do just something that's different that I can be proud of, that's something that's my only aim for the next album. There will be a next album. It's not just a one-off. It's going to be a regular thing. But yeah.
They're definitely not bad inspirations to have. Those are some pretty top tier names in music to follow. So we know that stages are not what they used to be, but I'm curious for you, are you anxious to get to that point where you would play Pride?
Oh, I'd love to play Pride. I think I've had to learn an awful lot about the LGBTQ community, because I come from my upbringing was very straight, not because my parents forced me down a straight line. It was nothing like that. Just the people I hung out with and my interests were all around sport, and it was all very sort of straight. So I've had to do a lot of learning, and comedy's been amazing for that, because I've met so many people from different backgrounds and different parts of the LGBTQ community. So I think if a few years ago, I would have felt kind of like an imposter doing that, because I don't think I'd have felt like I'd learned enough about the LGBTQ community in its fullness. I feel a bit better with that now, and I think I've learned an awful lot, and I've made huge amounts of errors over the past, sort of with my own sort of misconceptions and stereotypes that we all tend to take with us in the LGBTQ community. And I'm happy that the last few years has hopefully made me a bit broader, and I'll still want to learn. So from an educational piece, I'd love to perform Pride. I think it would be amazing to sort of share the stage with other amazing sort of LGBTQ people. So yeah, if they want me, I'll do it. But yeah, I'd like to do, I mean, I'd love to do festivals as well. My dream would be to do Glastonbury, and that would be on just like a little tiny stage, even if it's just me in the corner with a guy in a banjo who's just a little bit too high. That's perfect. That's me playing Glastonbury, and I'll claim it as such.
Listen, the sound from the first song, it sounds Glastonbury ready. I will say that, like, I mean, you have a very, I don't want to say highbrow. That's not the word I'm trying to say. You have a very elevated, that's what I'm trying to think of, an elevated sound that's in Pilot that I could see being, hearing at something like a festival like that. It wouldn't surprise me in the least. Then again, I never thought I would ever see Beyonce either at some of these festivals, but there you have it.
I mean, I was asked via an online dating app who my favorite diva was the other day. And that's when I felt very exposed. I was like, oh shit, I don't have a favorite diva. And then I chose Bjork. And I'm not sure if she's a proper diva, but I bet she's a bit of a diva when you work with her. But like, I was just like, she's like groundbreaking. She's changed music forever. And so I was like, is that a good diva?
I think so. To be honest, she'd probably be mine. As a Bjork fan and as a Sugar Cubes fan, when I think about, I came through alternative rock. I came through rock and roll. So it wasn't necessarily pop music. And when they talk about divas, a lot of the time, it's usually because of that presence, right? But and I've seen Bjork twice live. There's something to be said when you're in the presence of Bjork and she's performing. I just think it's a different style of music that's never been thought of in the same concept as diva. But for alternative divas, oh, she's in there.
I was like, I felt like I got the question wrong, and I was like, PJ Harvey, and I was like, I think I'm just thinking of really like incredibly inspirational women in music, and I'm like, and I imagine there's loads of other divas I'm not thinking of, but yeah, I think that's very much my diet of music, as I've been brought up on that. So I sort of I haven't been brought up on pop much, but I like to make pop through music a little bit. I'd definitely say this is the most pop sort of music I've made, although the album does have a couple of 7-minute songs on.
Well, there, you know what? There's been a few artists that I've talked to recently who are really big fans of, people have, I shouldn't say people, I don't want to generalize anything, but there is this bit of a stereotype that if you're going to be a male music artist and you happen to be, you know, gay, LGBT, whatever, that you're going to automatically swing to a very electro pop sound because that's what people hear on the radio. But then I'm talking to a lot of folks who are out there, and instrumentation is such a huge part of them, and storytelling, old style, it's not really that old, but traditional style storytelling, where, you know, it has a beginning and an ending and a journey right straight through it, that they're getting back into that because they now have the opportunity, I think, to choose the directions that want to go and be their authentic selves while doing it. So I think that we're going to see a lot more of the music that you're making, this type of music. The Irrepressibles are a really great example of that. There's a lot of artists that are out there, a lot in the UK.
Perfume Genius as well, just to give, I mean, that last album is an absolute masterpiece as well. And that feels like a slightly different change. But I also think that stems from a really important scene from the 80s as well, which gave sort of queer people a bit more of a voice. And I can sort of see why sort of electro pop has become a sort of genre that's synonymous with the LGBTQ community. But yeah, there's so much to be excited about.
Completely, including your own. Yours is very exciting. I find it very exciting, and I'll be interested to see who you pick up as fans, not just from listeners, but also from other artists, because what I'm seeing is a lot of the artists wanting to work together from within the queer community, and they are trying to diversify themselves by finding artists who are doing things very, very differently to collaborate with. So I'll be very interested to see kind of how that shapes out for you.
I'd love to do collaborations. I'd really like to collaborate with like a drill or grime artist who really like completely different from what I write. I'd love to write music for that. And just, again, a bit of a learning process. I think if I was to collaborate, I'd want it to be completely a genre that I'm just completely, in some ways, uncomfortable with writing for, or sort of working with someone on that. So I think I'd like to sort of work with a drill or a hip hop artist, just to sort of see what we could do together, whether even what I do and what they do can ever mix. But I think that's part of the joy of music. We're seeing it loads now, like musicians like merging forces, like Bon Iver, James Blake, people like that. They all started sort of working with each other, and then all. I think everyone in music's written for Beyonce now. But I know James Blake was a big part of Lemonade, and sort of it all works out. Not that I'm saying I'll ever be writing for Beyonce, but you never know. Who knows?
Awesome. Well, listen, this has been fantastic. I'm so excited by your music and by kind of what is about to, I think, happen for you. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of what you just kind of were just saying, like that kind of collaboration that we were just talking about. I think that once people get a sense of who you are and get a chance to kind of hear more of your music, I think it's going to just be a natural thing. You will have people sliding into the DMs and saying, hey, we should do a writing session. We should jump online and do whatever. And I think that we're going to see that.
I hope so. To be honest, the real goal, this is sort of come from literally nothing in March to where I am now with like lots of stuff done. I'm just happy if people listen to it. That's my minimum expectation is if a few people listen to it and maybe half of them like it. That's my percentage is what I'm looking for.
Well, I think it's going to be more than a few people, and I think they're all going to like it. That's my forecast. If I have any powers of,
I hope you do. Fingers crossed.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This is Joe Parsons. The single is called Pilot. It is out everywhere now streaming, so you need to go get it. You need to listen to it. You need to share it. You need to invite people in to hear it because it's good music. Album is coming out on October 13th, also Joe's birthday, turning 30, the big 3-0. And the video is out on YouTube.
I'm absolutely fine with turning 30. I'm not even, shut up, I'm actually fine with it. So stop even mentioning it, it's fine. 30, it's fine. I'm fine with it.
So on October 13th, everyone go find Joe on Instagram at Joe Parsons Music and say happy birthday.
That's very kind. Or just have a lovely life. And I hope everyone's keeping safe and well.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for joining me, Joe. And I'm going to return you to your life from which I ripped you from.
Oh, thank you so much for ripping me into your life. It's been lovely. I've really, really enjoyed this. It's been lovely meeting you, mate.
Thanks, and we will talk soon.